Happy Sunday, everyone, and welcome to my show where it really is okay to not be okay. I'm Rae Bonney, a qualified counsellor, workplace mental health specialist, and not to mention a very dedicated and oftentimes enthusiastically disruptive men's issues advocate. It's not every girl's dream job, but hey, remember, men also matter. And just like that, I'm back. Our last time in the studio was in June, and wow, haven't Melburnians become well acquainted with our four walls and backyards, but still, I'm very personally feeling grateful to be safe and well. Anyway, as always on my show, I'm unwrapping one of the greatest gifts going around, and that is people. Layer by layer, we explore the thoughts, experiences, achievements, and challenges of ordinary people bound to inspire the best you. So turn up your radio. The time is just 31 minutes past 10. We just heard from the beautiful and talented Michelle Ciccardo with her very popular Italian program, Fantastica, Michelle. And although I'm back in the studios here at 3WBC, live guests are not yet permitted. So I've prepared a bit of a cook-up of great minds and mentors to create a flavour-packed panel to deliver a rich and nourishing radio recipe. First on the pass is none other than chef, founder and writer Matt Wilkinson, who has recently taken up a residency at Mornington Peninsula winery restaurant Montalto. I think that's how you say it. But in his spare time, Matt is the creative director at Four Pillars Gin. And just after 11 o'clock, we will hear from writer, eater, traveller, cook and well-known age good food journalist Dani Valent. And then topping the show off is Robbie Bell, founder of City Larder. He also runs his own podcast, Cooking the Books. Probably not a great title in this day and age, where he interviews prominent chefs and food industry professionals. And I'll be asking my trademark question, what does it feel like being you today? And not to mention drawing out all their ideas, insights and contribution to good mental health in the hospitality industry. So without further ado, let's welcome to the show Mr. Matt Wilkinson. Whoa!
Hello, how are we?
I'm good, Matt. How are you?
I'm really good. It's sun's shining down on the Mornington Peninsula. It's a great day to be alive.
Oh, absolutely. And I think any day these days is a great day to be sort of up and going, isn't it?
It is. Victorians have had a rough trot, I reckon, over the last, but I think some joy should be seen from what we've been able to achieve and do.
Well, hence my program today. I'm particularly fond of the hospitality industry for many reasons, and not only because I'm a participant of it, and I think, the world has, in the last, 8 or 9 months really, really missed out on hospitality, and I'm hoping that with that deprivation, people will be a lot more appreciative about what you guys actually do to keep the world humming.
Yeah, it's a very hard industry. I think it's one of those things where we've sometimes got lost in hospitality, the word within it about being hospitable.
Yes.
And that it is, it's a centuries of thousands of years old industry. That takes a lot of hard work and just dealing with people. And then the beautiful side of it is cooking food.
Yes, and, bringing that to people. Now, you and I met back in October 2018. I won't forget that because that was my son, George Wintle. Yeah. He's the founder of Eat the Issue, which is a mental health charity for the hospitality industry. And he was only 20 years old when he launched that event with Victor Leong's Lee Ho Fook restaurant. And you spoke, and you were the keynote speaker for that event, and I will never forget how you spoke and how eloquent you were about, talking about your own mental health within the industry in a way that was really inspiring rather than something that was stigmatising.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well, I think it's one of those things about, I'm 40 years old now, and I entered the industry when I was 16. And unfortunately, when I was a young boy, my dad's second wife, my stepmom, committed suicide, and I was the one that found her. So it's one of those things that actually, the stigma of not just an event like that happening, but your own mental well-being is one to me.
Mm.
I think we're now coming to terms with it that it's something that some people have to deal with every day.
Yes.
And it's about trying to keep a very clear and strong mind, and having people around you to talk to, and to also, I guess, kind of lead people. Also, if you're in that same mental space, but also listening to people and asking for help, which fortunately I think I've been able to do very well.
Yeah, but help is not often there for people, Matt. And I guess I work in the industry 24/7, and even for myself, when I reach out for help, it's literally not there. So we've got to, I guess, my idea is, how do we create environments where we enable ourselves to manage? And, I know you've got a number of irons in the fire, Matt. You've Pope Joan, the pie shop, not to mention a plethora of books, a creative gig with 4 pillars, and the latest being Captain Culinary Consultant at Montalto on the Mornington Peninsula. But, I've read about your year this year, and I'm particularly interested about your experience with Crofter because, again, I'm not like many, but I'm a massive fan of George Columbaris, especially how he supported my son into the industry in such a wonderful, supportive way. He's an excellent boss, and I have no shame in saying that. But you were kind of a little bit, you were tied up in that with the launch of Crofter, and I'm interested to hear how that year kicked off for you.
Well, if I'm honest, and without swearing, it was a shit of a year. I'm very much about family. I think if we add that to, I also try to be the best father and lover and partner as well.
You're a good lover. That's good.
Well,
everyone knows. Oh, the phone's ringing.
in a way, I try to, just try to be a good human. But I'm very fortunate. I was brought up by an extraordinary woman, my mum, who only through age do I realise what she actually did for me and the sacrifices she did. I no longer speak with my father. That was one of the major issues. That's, I guess, one of the hardest things is seeing myself in my dad and dealing with those things.
Yeah.
But when family really does matter to me, and I guess coming to the point about Crofter is, I gave up my January not to go on holiday, which I've done for the last 9 years. I've always taken January, Christmas and January off, and I didn't this year. I worked all the way through it to get Crofter open. And like with any business, but especially in hospitality, you're working crazy hours, and the amount of energy that you put into opening a business, you don't get that return for a good year. I basically worked 70 days straight. Some, anywhere from a 6 to a 16-hour day. And that is my choice. That's not something that was put on me because of the company. That is my choice to get the business up and running, especially hospitality business. It's what's actually needed. And after 26 services, it abruptly shut. But I found out the week prior to that and had to hold on to that.
And just for the listeners, Crofter was opened at the old Hellenic Republic in Brunswick. So that was when George Columbaris was going through his own issues, I guess, and you were able to pick up that premises.
Yeah, I didn't go in with rose-colored glasses. I knew the story that obviously for years George has had embattlement with the paying of people. It was made of the scapegoat for an industry, but not just that. The whole of Australia. You only need to look at what happened with Woolworths and Coles and some of the other bigger names of not paying, and 7-Eleven. But George was seen as the bad guy. And unfortunately, he was in business partnership, and they chose to close everything up. I guess when it did happen, I had a lot of energy that I couldn't restore back. And I actually went a bit wild for 4 weeks, and I suffered massive depression and tired and anger, and I went through the whole thing, and then coronavirus hit, and the whole world was kind of at the same level as I was at mentally. So I had to kick back in. Crofter, the hard thing with Crofter as well is like, when you're a chef, or when you are putting yourself forward of something that you'd like. So the menu was very vegetable dominant, with meat as a side, and it's how I like to eat and cook. It was something a little bit different, so it was open for criticism. You're working with a new team. You're trying to build a team, and strive with them, but get them working. There's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on mentally, and you have to keep on top of it. And it was just abruptly finished, and it actually really hurt. It hurt because I guess the first part of it is just dismay, and most people in hospitality, especially, loves a good drink.
Yes.
And I had a good drink for about 4 days, and then had to come, and I was just left. I was numb and then left angry. But George is a very good friend. I don't blame him. I blame there's just lots of lies when companies do go into administration.
Well, I read an article that you made a public statement to say that you were angry that the lies that consume big business directors you feel will always be believed, and you're angry that the government can't see the industry was in strife, and this is before COVID, and offers no real support or future hope. Do you think during COVID that the government perhaps has recognised hospitality as an industry in need, and that there might be some more support?
I think the government's done an amazing. Australian state and federal has been amazing in during coronavirus. My problem is a lot with local councils of how hard they make being a business owner, which therefore then is stress on. And I think there's two problems within industries at the moment: hospitality and retail. And if we look at those things, but I'll talk about hospitality. When you're only returning about 6% as an owner, right, and you're having increasing wages and just all these elements, it comes down to risk. And I just don't think the risk's there anymore for small business owners that want to go for it. They're in lives. Small businesses, the biggest employer in Australia, there is a problem there. I think the hard thing is what I hope coming out of coronavirus is, and the change in the industry. It's not just what business owners do; it's what they then do to other people.
Yes.
So I'll take the maid establishment. So I brought on a lot of friends who are growers, PR and marketing, designers, but mainly fruit and vegetable people and wine people. And through trust, they trusted me that the business was fine, and it wasn't fine, and they should have told me that. So all of those people who had outstanding contracts for 30 days accounts didn't get paid. So I've owned my own business before. I've been in trouble before financially, and be able to claw my way out of it and been able to pay everyone and trust. Now all those people, and I guess that's the one thing where I'm angry. It's not about money myself being owed all that extra energy. Is that these friends who are primary producers, that $1,000 here and $600 there, and $3,000, $4,000 here and there is a lot of money. And big business doesn't do it.
No.
And that's where hospitality, I think, is defunct. And I hope through coronavirus that's a lot of people have lost a lot of money. Not just, and everyone sees and says about restaurants and the poor bars. I can't wait to get back into them. But behind all of that, they're really just people, businesses. Behind all of that are more people that grow and produce food and drinks for vendors in hospitality. And they got hurt as well. And I really do hope that the government comes in, and for those people, there is an out. So if you take the maid establishment, they went into involuntary administration. The first three people that were getting the money was the big banks, and then Radic himself, who got no money back, but he was going to be third because he secured his money against the business. Thousands of then other companies got nothing.
And not to mention the people that were employed by the maid establishment. People on visas from other countries, where. But
the government paid back. The government covers the staff, right? And that's super, and that got paid. But the people that have the daily lives, like let's just say a small vegetable grower, right? They might be owed $800 in carrots. so much energy gone into that, but they've got nothing to protect them.
Yeah.
And that to me is it's a conundrum. But they're the people who need protection from that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And also even just eliminating. So instead of pushing it out, there's some big businesses, big hospitality chains in Melbourne, I won't mention obviously, that run out 90, 120 days on suppliers. And that's a knock-on effect. So if you're getting money for your food or your drink straight away, as you do as a customer to let's say a publican, that money then should be passed on within at least 7 days. I think this is where the government can really come in and make change for the better to protect us all.
Yeah. In fact, we've got Robbie Bell from City Larder coming up last in the show today, and I know it's a real hobby horse of his because I asked him about, does he now have a different approach to risk management because of his experiences, and he certainly does, and he will talk about that. And, if we had more time, I wish I could delve into it a bit more with you, but, I would like to get on to a lighter note because what you've said is really, really important. We need to change how people in hospitality are paid, and you mentioned retail as well, that they're very high-risk areas for people. And when I just mentioned about employees of the maid established, many of those, George, employed as people on visas from other countries who come from countries that were very, very dangerous. And, the people that were very instrumental in bringing George's businesses down, they didn't think that those people then had to go back to those countries. And they found safety and security there, and there was hundreds of those people. So, if you thought that you were bringing George down to teach him a lesson, you also really affected many, many other people's lives as well. So think about what you're doing, people. Now, Matt, what did you want to be when you were a little boy?
I actually wanted to be a professional footballer, soccer player. And I was pretty good, I'll be honest with you. If you looked at my beautiful rotund body now, you'd be like, no way. But my dad was heavily involved in soccer. As in, he was a sponsor of football teams, and all my dad's friends were professional footballers. And I played actually for Yorkshire, the county, and for my hometown, Barnsley, up until under 16.
Where are you, Barnsley?
Barnsley, South Yorkshire. There is there's three famous people there from Barnsley. There's the world's greatest cricketer ever, Sir Geoffrey Boycott.
Oh, yes. Yep.
There's Michael Parkinson.
Yep.
There was a famous comedian, Charlie Williams, who was one of the first black comedians to break the circuit of England and was part of a massive change. And then there was this devilishly good-looking chef called Matt Wilkinson. I was going to say as well.
There is a fourth. There is a fourth there. In fact, I spend a lot of time in Burnley. My youngest son, his grandparents live in Burnley, so when it's not COVID, we pop over there every year, which must be somewhere near Barnsley, I imagine.
Yeah, well, it's just across the Pennines. So that's in the Lancashire area, which is there's quite a bit of rivalry between Yorkshire and Lancashire. Robbie's from... You think I've got an accent until you speak to Robbie.
I have spoken to Robbie. He talks a lot with a strong accent.
And you start the show with a good-looking Englishman, English Australian. You'll end the show with a not-so-good-looking English Australian.
So if you were a bit of a soccer fiend, what was the first dish you can remember cooking, and who and what was your inspiration?
Well, my story was my father. I grew up in a pub. My mum and dad divorced when I was young. Dad worked for Scottish and Courage, which actually had the rights to Foster's UK. Yep. My dad worked for that company, and then after my dad's second wife, he moved in above his best mate's pub. And so I grew up in a pub, and after my football career was obviously I wasn't going to make it to the top. I didn't make the training for the England team at under 16. So I gave up football. I was a I couldn't make it at the top, I didn't really want to try and make it at the lower levels. And I'd been working in the pub, and so I basically wanted to be. I can remember a careers counsellor at school, and I left school early. He was like, "Oh, what do you want to be?" I was like, "Oh, I just want to run a pub." And they're like, "That's not a career." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm like, "Well, what can I do?" He's like, "Well, you like soccer. You don't want to be." He said, "But the Navy's got a really good sports academy." I'm like, "Okay." And I actually went down to Portsmouth and went on a submarine. And I was like, "I'm not living on this. There's no way I'm going to live in here. This is shocking." So I ended up. The last year of school, I was basically just working in the pub. Well, my dad's best friend had about 16 pubs. So at 16, I wanted to be a publican. And I obviously wasn't old enough to drink, let alone run a pub. So I had to start basically Barnsley Tech. And I did a hospitality and catering management course. I hated cooking. It was one thing I didn't want to do.
Wow.
And I can remember the first day of me having to get chef whites, and I tried them on and put the checkered pants on and the white apron and white thing, and did the toggle with the neckerchief and the hat. And I went down the stairs, and all the old blokes in the very stereotypical, and they've got very, looks like a poofter. Look at you, you big girl. And it's like it was embarrassment, and I hated it. I hated that element of structure.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was very fortunate. My head tutor, John Stevenson, saw something in me, and the cooking element I wasn't really interested in. I just wanted to, and at that time I just wanted to. There's lots of girls, and I just wanted to party and see what I could do. Yeah. And anyway, my first term break, he organised for me to go down to work with his son, but I was supposed to be front of house. And he said, "Look, you've got to go down and do the kitchen. So 1 week front of house, 1 week kitchen, and come back." Well, the old bastard put me straight into the kitchen, didn't he? And I went into this kitchen, and there was no neckerchiefs. You didn't have to wear a hat. It was butcher's aprons. It was a bit Marco P.O.Y.T.
Yeah.
And I walked into this kitchen. It was just high energy. It was beautiful, and there was sharp knives and loud sounds and a rush that I'd never experienced. And I was in love straight away. It was like, I fit in here. The head chef was a tough guy. There was the beautiful girl at the front of the house, and I was 16. I was just like, wow. And the first night, we were plating this dish, and I'll never ever forget this dish. It was a hollowed out globe artichoke that had been cooked in a blanc, and then it was filled with a crab mousse with some smoked salmon over the top. Around that was a little salad of frisée and fine chervil and parsley and chopped shallots and concasse of tomato and a lemon vinaigrette. And then coming out of the artichoke and smoked salmon was these 2 chives. And I grabbed some chives. Somebody put the chives in. It was the head chef. I put these 2 chives in, and I took them out and put them on the floor and put 2 more chives in. He grabbed me literally by the scruff of my neck, screaming at me what I did that for, and I'm just like, they just look shit, chef. They look shit, in my little 16-year-old accent. And he's scruffled me on the head, said, "Good on you," and that was it. And that night he bought me 2 pints of beer, and I picked up my first cigarette and started smoking it at 16. I was like, I love this world. And the next morning, I get called into I get to work, and I'm all buzzy, ready for it's a long day of work. Starting at 8, and you get finished around, try to get finished before the pub shuts so you can get down to the pub. About 11 o'clock at night, and at 8 o'clock I get called into the general manager of the hotel's office, and I remember walking down the hall, I'm going, what have I done? No, come on, because the only time at 16 I've been called into an office is usually to get suspended or detention. And I get in there, and the head chef's there, and I'm sat down, I'm like shaking really quite heavily internally, and like, why? Like, they're going to send me back to Barnsley. This is shit. I've got 2 more weeks to go, and they offered me a job there and then. They're like, look, we know it's your first day, but we're looking for a young apprentice. Will you start? And they offered me a ridiculous amount of money, live in. They told me to go home. I had to have my 17th birthday, which was Christmas, and they told me to start the January of 1997, 96.
Mm.
And I called my mum and said, look, I'm leaving, I'm moving to London.
Wow.
And left, and that was it. And that's that dish that really stands out.
Gosh, that is such a beautiful story. That's what I love so much about this show is that you do your research and, you craft some questions that might sort of emerge things, but that was just amazing.
Yeah.
The way you describe the sharp knives and the energy and, I get that having a son who, since he could even stand up, had a spoon in his hand and has never looked back. It's never looked back. And George describes the same thing. He can work, you know, 20 hours a day and just beyond the next day is enthusiastic, ready to go. And I think that's such a demonstration that the hospitality industry is a great industry for people who have the right profile for it. And
the classic thing for that, there's Jules, who's the head of garden and production down here at Montalto. The most wonderful human being, the most beautiful garden. She looks, the property's stunning.
Yeah.
And during COVID, all the chefs have been in the garden, and we were just talking the other day over a cup of tea, and she's like, I just love chefs. They just know how to put and work. Like, we're not built with, you've got to take your 15-minute break, and that's kind of hard at the moment.
What's a break?
What's a break?
That's been the hard thing for people in hospo. This COVID, having a break has got, itchy feet.
Yeah, well, it's also, if you're trained mentally as well to go, you don't eat lunch, you eat on the go, you eat fast. You're in there's cooking and from all levels, but I've been cooked at, at quite a high level. It's dynamic, it's energy driven, and for the right people, there's just a pure love for it. And then you add all these other like flavour and the sense and sound. It is an amazing energy, and it's a drug once you get into it that you kind of, people. I thrive off it, and I know a lot of people that do, like, especially George's son. And once you're in that world, it's very, very hard to come out of it. I think one thing that I've learned, I was from a very, I guess it's violent kitchens, as we call them.
Yeah.
My first three, so I was in London, and then I went to Scotland, Edinburgh, and then I came out here and I was at Vue de Mons. And for the first 10 years of, I guess, my traineeship, that was probably 8 years, was from really shouty kitchens. And that's how I became. I became someone as well, a leader at certain shouts. Now, it wasn't until I met my now wife that I realised there's more to life than screaming at someone. It's about trying to build humans, and people don't remember. People remember the assholes that they can have respect, but they don't really. But people that can build humans, and that's what I love now about my job, especially at Montalto, is trying to get the best out of everyone, and I hope that's where the industry's going.
Well, I think they're such great words. I would love to spend another hour talking to you, but we do need to go to a break because I do have somebody waiting on the line. But I'm coming down to Montalto when we can. I think the last time I saw you was at Pope Joan, had breakfast there with George and my little son, which was very nice. And so we'll come down and visit you there, especially if the gardens are so beautiful. We really do need to be supporting the hospitality industry.
For human.
She's. I don't know how she stacks in what she does, but before we go to Dani, this is the time we start rolling out my very special guest song requests, and you've come up with quite a tune, Matt. So could you please announce your song and what it means to you?
This is for my dear friends, the Bazzini family at Chrismont, Arnie and Joe, who really supported me when I first came to Australia. And I used to run their festivals for them, and their beautiful Sicilian and Italian background. And Dean Martin's Hey Brother Pour the Wine was always playing loud. And I'd ask for it to play about 3 or 4 times, and it just reminds me of fun, friendship, and good wine. Dean Martin's Hey Brother Pour the Wine. It's such a great song.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks enormously for being on the show today, Matt, and
Thank
good
you,
luck
Rae.
with your service today at Montalto. And our listeners, do not go away. We'll be back. The time is just 3 minutes past 11 and you're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC with Rae Bonney, and we just heard from chef Matt Wilkinson and his special song request, Dean Martin, performing Hey Brother, Pour the Wine from a 1964 compilation album by Capitol Records. Now waiting, and I know sweating it out for the upcoming Dan Andrews presser, is none other than word wizard, food fanatic and world warrior, Dani Valent. Welcome to the show, Dani.
Thank you so much for having me, Rae. It's excellent to be here.
I know, and my 12-year-old son Rory is here. He's my producer for today, and he just let me know that I'd left my mic on when I rang you up, so that also went to air.
Good. It's good to keep it real.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no such thing as sorry in radio, Dani.
That's all right. We're all on the train together, Rae. So yeah, all good.
Now, we met through your wonderful podcast, Dirty Linen, when you actually interviewed my son George, and
I did.
Yeah, and then later you got in contact with me because he'd mentioned me on his podcast.
Well, he more than mentioned you, Rae. He enthused about you over and over again. So, yeah, my podcast talks about issues in hospitality, and I spoke to George because he's an activist in mental health in hospitality. Yep. And he's obviously so inspired by you and the work that you've done that when I wanted to talk about your hospitality workers returning to the workplace after a long lockdown, I thought you were the perfect person to, talk us through all the things that people might be experiencing in that context. And indeed, you were as wonderful as I hoped.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. In fact, I was just speaking to Matt Wilkinson, and a friend of yours, and he also spoke very highly of you on the show, but he also talked about his mum being such an inspiration for him as well, which is really nice to hear.
Yeah, look, there's something so special about hearing men speak fondly of their mothers. I don't know what it is. It probably needs a bit of unpacking, but I'm sure for me personally, it may have something to do with having teenage girls who do not always speak of their mother with the greatest fondness, especially when she tells them that, that it's time to come home.
You sound like you're speaking from experience, Dani.
Perhaps just slightly, yes.
Well, I have a 26-year-old daughter, Rose, and I don't know how I would survive without her, but she was 15 once, and between 15 and 20, I'm not entirely sure how I survived that time, but George was also very, very supportive. But they do those neural pathways sort themselves out and they get there. Yeah,
well, I was a disgusting teenager, so there's two things that I think about that. One is I've got it, whatever comes at me, I had coming to me, and the other one is it can all work out okay in the end. So,
yes, it's just getting there. But speaking of you being a teenager, part of the joys of producing this show is doing the extensive guest research. And what I found out about you, well, I've made a bit of a trajectory of fun little word associations because I just didn't know how to write to it because it's just so much information. So if you can work with me, I'm going to start this.
Sure.
Lonely Planet and World Food Turkey.
Okay. So my first real job was at travel publisher Lonely Planet, and I was so fortunate to be there in a time when international travel was just, on this ever-growing expansion, and you look at that particularly from now when we're not allowed to travel, it seems even more magical. It was also the start of the age of the internet. Travel publishing was really strong. Everything was super exciting. And I worked at Lonely Planet. I did various different roles in the company, mostly just through saying yes to whatever was put in front of me. One of the things that was put in front of me was to go to Turkey to write a guide to Turkish cuisine. Wow. And at the time, I was mostly working on guidebooks where it was all about bus timetables and youth hostels and, whether there were bed bugs and whether the showers were hot. And the idea of going somewhere just to eat seemed incredibly alluring. And, that turned out to be my first food writing job and certainly set me on a path which I'm still on.
Well, so is that where you settled on food? Is that where that sparked that real passion?
Oh, look, I guess I was drawn to do that job because I already loved food and already loved the way that it was already an important way, it threads through which I travelled and engaged with people, but I think that really cemented it. It was just so interesting, you know, like I got to Istanbul, and instead of finding out the opening hours of all the galleries, which would, you know, be your sort of job as a regular Lonely Planet author, it was like, you know, I was on the trail, I'd heard about these amazing chicken kebabs and this guy who made his own yogurt down a laneway, and it was that sort of journey that really, I suppose, opened my eyes to the way that food is such an instant, deep and authentic way to connect with people. It's endlessly fascinating. You learn something, you know, at least once a day, and that's why I know I'll never get sick of it.
Yeah, and it's also something, I mean, I don't know you well, but we've had, you know, various, you know, engagements, but even through your writing and all of the things that you do, it appears that it's your natural curiosity that gets you going on everything.
I think I am perhaps naturally curious, but I just can't really understand how you wouldn't be, because things are so interesting. And if someone's interested in something, then I figure there must be something to it. So anyone that expresses a passion for something, whether it's, you know, cardamom pods, or whether it's a particular way to season a cast iron pan, or a way to chop zucchini, like, it's just, if someone finds interest in it, then I figure it must be interesting, and I want to know more about it as well.
Well, it makes you so good. And, you know, just a backflip, you know, straight out of Lonely Planet. And, you know, I think every person, actually that's a bit of a stretch, but so many people in the world would have been envious of that job that you had during that time. But then I heard about a production called Here. So I'm going to say Here, Armenia, New York City and Sundance, or Sundance, as some people would say.
Yeah, so my work as a Lonely Planet author took me to New York. I was fortunate to write about New York a couple of times, and other places in the US. I met over there through mutual friends, a filmmaker called Braden King, and we realised that some stories that I had kicking around and a passion project of his really needed to be put together into a film. And that film ended up being Here, which we shot in Armenia. It was about a cartographer and a photographer. I'm pretty obsessed with maps, which was always a big part of my work as a Lonely Planet author.
Yeah.
And maps, I suppose, are just another way of understanding the world, just like food is. And yeah, so we made a film. It's a road movie. It's pretty arty, and it premiered at Sundance in 2011, I think. And I mean, the film isn't my world, and I was so fortunate to be able to dip into it and get a film made, which is such a hard thing. Like, it feels like the film industry it's structured in such a way that things have to go wrong at every single step of the way, and it always seems like it's about to fall over. And so that happened with our film, but in the end it was made. I'm really proud of it. It was a little indie film, went around the world on the festival circuit. And we're actually working on another film now, so that's really exciting too.
Here in Australia?
Well, he's still in New York. I'm here, and we wrote that film more or less remotely. We were lucky enough to meet up a couple of times. One of those times in Sundance at some screenwriting workshops, which was an incredible experience. But yeah, look, you know, it's funny. We were thinking about it. We wrote that film sort of on the phone and by email, and at that time, you pretty much had to sit in your house to be on the phone. And now I'm walking the streets. Like, we were doing it through lockdown, and I had my Melbourne 5K, and I was like, you know, walking around chatting to Braden while I was, you know, it was just really interesting that you can sort of notice the way that the world has changed through those kinds of resonances.
Yeah, but also just describing that ability that we have to be able to, you know, work remotely, especially, you know, producing, you know, something like you are, a movie or a film, that we can do that and, you know, reduce so many overheads and make it possible. Yeah,
that's right. I mean, I'll go, like I went to Armenia for the shoot, wherever we end up shooting this film, I'll go. But yeah, a lot of the work can be done remotely. And so especially for road movies, I think, like being in different spaces, time zones, headspaces. I mean, there's a lot that connects us, and there's a lot that is the same. But then, I think even the fact that when we talk, it's my morning and his evening, that just puts us in a certain headspace. It's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah. In fact, you know, when I sort of wake up in the morning, and I don't mind sort of trolling through a bit of social media, you are there all the time, but not just in one fashion. You get across so much, whether you're producing your podcast Dirty Linen, or you're writing for the Age, or you're writing recipes, or, you know, it's just constant. So my next words are critic, cookbook author, and Thermomix.
Okay. Looks to me, it's there are a lot of different hats that I wear, but to me there is really a thread, and the thread is, I guess, connection and people. And so, okay, so critic, I've been writing about restaurants for 20 years, and to me it's always about trying to appreciate the restaurant for what it is trying to do, like what is its project is always my first question, and then it's trying to honour their story and translate the experience and enrich the experience for my readers.
Because I think the common feeling about critics is that you just go there and bag the food and write a really terrible article about the restaurant, or vice versa.
Yeah, I'm pretty glass half full, and I'd probably rather not write about somewhere than write about it, like really super trash it. Sometimes I am critical, and there's a place for that as well, but I think it needs to be done, really carefully and in a way that really, I guess, is that there's a point to it.
Yeah, because there are people at the end of it, aren't there?
Yeah, look, as much as anyone else, I can be entertained by reading a total takedown of a restaurant. There's a couple of reasons that I wouldn't do it. One is that our libel laws in Australia are really strong, and it's different. Like a lot of those takedowns are in the UK. The laws are quite different. So there's that part to it. But I think it's like, what is the point of a review? It's to enrich the experience. It's to create connection. It's to give somebody an understanding of, you know, why are they actually doing that with the barley? Oh, well, it's because, you know, in, I don't know, West Africa, this happens, so that, you know. So it's about rounding out the context. And so what are the other words? Cookbook author and Thermomix. They sort of go together a bit. So my food journalism took me to learn about Thermomix, which is this kitchen machine that I became pretty obsessed with, and ended up writing a few cookbooks for it.
Is it still a thing? Yeah. Because it was quite out there, you know, a number of years ago, and everyone was on it.
Well, I guess there's more Thermomixes around now than there ever have been. I guess it's almost, I wouldn't say mainstream because it's still an expensive piece of kit, but it's certainly, it's not that unusual for somebody to have one. I still love it. I still use it all the time. But I think
do you dry your tea towels in it, Dani?
So you put tea towels in it to dry the machine. So it's around the other way. I have done that. It's not a super big content focus of mine anymore, but it certainly took me to I've met some amazing people through my work with the machine, and it enabled me to do some cookbooks, I've got a big section on my website that's all about Thermomix videos. So it's a part of my story that I really cherish, that it's not a major focus of mine anymore. In
fact, speaking of your website, it's extraordinarily well put together, and anyone that's listening in, just search up Dani Valent. That's Dani, DaniValent. Get on a website. There's something there for everyone. It's really cool.
Thank you.
Dani, where do you find time to be a wife and mother?
Well, unlike a lot of people, I always worked from home, so my life has always been a bit of a jumble. And I realised early on in my career as a freelancer that it didn't really work for me to try to compartmentalise and to, have different, have everything very rigid. For me, it works better to have everything on one list. And, so on my list might be, write this review, call this person, do this interview, put on the washing, get dinner going, feed the cat, everything just sort of goes together in a bit of a jumble. I can't remember how I came up with this, but someone asked me to try to describe what I do, and I had this image of myself in a room with a whole lot of helium balloons on the ceiling with their like curly strings hanging down, and I felt like my life was sort of like going around the room and just trying to grab these strings one by one and sort of bring these balloons into some kind of order.
Oh wow, what a beautiful analogy. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. I'm going to use that in my own head, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a bit chaotic, but it's not too panicky.
Yeah.
It's just, things just sort of slowly get drawn together, and trying to keep things too tidy isn't really my way.
I think that's really good guidance for people with small business or sole traders. I know I'm one myself and wear many, many different hats too, but I like your description of keeping everything on one list rather than compartmentalising and trying to, draw boundaries around everything separately. It's I think that fluidity probably takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it?
All I can say is it works for me, and I
Yeah.
know that some people are really big on, Monday's house day or whatever it is, or I block, from 5 o'clock I turn off my phone and I'm just all about the kids. I'm really not. Like, my kids are used to me saying I just need to finish this, or I bring them in. It's like I'm on a deadline, I'm feeling a bit stressed. I'd really love it if you could walk the dogs, start dinner,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
That's right. Enabling your kids is not slavery, people. It's actually it prepares them for independence. It's a cool thing.
And I think also that I've got this busy career and life, and I think it's not too bad for my daughters to see, that I work hard, and that enables me to that brings benefits to all of us. Whether it's that I can take everyone out for breakfast to a cafe because I'm reviewing it, or I don't know, I do an extra story and I get a little bit of extra money, and then they can buy some stuff on Etsy, whatever it is.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's great role modelling for kids, for parents to show children what they do and involve them in it, because again, we're raising our children to be independent. We're not raising them to be dependent on us. So that's a good bit of advice there as well, Dani. Now, I have a question for you. What did you want to be when you were a little girl?
Well, I always wanted to write. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to write, but that was always, I just loved writing from the beginning. Like, I always had little notebooks. I had a typewriter. I just wanted to write.
Have you still got your writings or musings from when you were little?
Yeah, they are somewhere, like in a box somewhere. My parents during lockdown have been going through all of their sort of archives, and they found, letters that I've written them and things like that. But I feel like I'm going to need to be retired and go through some kind of lockdown to actually organise all my bits and pieces. But yes, they're there somewhere.
Oh, that's so nice. Your parents have kept stuff, and that they enjoy doing that. I know I do. I've kept everything of my kids, which they complain about. They go, "Why would you keep that scrap of paper that I wrote on?" It's like, "Oh, it's special,"
Yeah, I don't know. I keep some things, but we've got a small house. I don't have heaps of storage, and sometimes I get a bit ruthless, and I don't know. It hurts to get rid of stuff, but then I also don't want to drown in stuff. So I guess it's always about finding that balance. Yeah.
Now, Dani, we talk a lot about the demise of hospitality due to COVID, but what do you see are some of the great opportunities for the industry, especially things that have been reimagined to create different revenue streams and prosperity for the future?
Yeah, look, it's a great topic. It's obviously been super tough times for hospitality, particularly in Victoria, through COVID. I mean, and internationally, there's so many countries that are just going through absolute pain. But I think one of the things that we saw so clearly is how creative our hospitality people are in terms of creating different income streams, endlessly pivoting during the pandemic and the various stages that we've gone through. So I think that there was a lot of the additional income streams that people won't let go of. They've seen how good that is for their businesses, that their customers want these different ways of accessing what they do. And as we reopen, the capacity is still limited. So it's not that restaurants can suddenly go back to 100% with dine-in. They still will possibly want to be doing some take-home options, whether it's a line of products. A lot of restaurants have developed these little providors, and I think those kinds of things will continue. I'd say it's a great opportunity for anybody in Australia who has ever considered working in hospitality. This is the time to get into it, because everybody is looking for staff, and I think it's going to be. If you're good, I think you'll be able to find a really good workplace. You'll be able to have your pick and choose of great workplaces that give you conditions that work for you in terms of hours So yeah, I've been saying to my one of my kids has already got a part-time job, but the other one who doesn't have one yet, in fact she's right now. She's got her first shift at a cafe. So I said, this is the time, get into it. Yeah. A lot of I've been campaigning through the pandemic on behalf of temporary visa holders who are the lifeblood of our hospitality industry. Those that are still here are, a lot of them are getting their jobs back, which is incredible. But a lot of them did leave on instruction from our Prime Minister. So they're not able to come back. So there is a massive staffing crisis upon us now. And if you're an Australian, I reckon try it out. Get into hospo. There's so much good in there. So when people might be seeking roles within hospo, what do you think is the recipe for creating a mentally healthy workplace, particularly in the space where the pressure is pretty intense and time is often of the essence, not allowing for many second chances? I think it's probably keeping perspective. There is a tendency, because service is so all-encompassing and there is high pressure, that you can, it's the worst thing ever if something goes wrong. But I think great employers and sensible staff need to keep a bit of perspective. Someone didn't get their food in a timely manner, they're not sitting at a table starving. You forgot you forgot the thing. You grilled the fish instead of crumbing and frying it. It's like no one died. I think it's just about maintaining a bit of healthy perspective and distance. And I know something that you're really big on is that you've got other things going on in your life as well. And I think that's really important. That as much as you might be passionate about working in hospitality, it's great to have other things that give you perspective and allow you to put things in context. No, that's a really good answer, because I think, even though, employment is in a state at the moment, I'll say just a state because I'm not entirely sure what that means, but people doing due diligence before they enter any employment state is very, very important, that that that's the environment that suits you, that, it resonates with your value and belief systems, because, sustaining employment, it's an everyday proposition. And we, as employees, we do have choices. It's not just all about the money that we take home. It's the enjoyment and experience that we have in the space. Yeah. And there's a certain amount of due diligence before you start, but, sometimes you really don't know what it's like until you're in the thick of it. But you don't have to stay. Especially now, I think there are going to be a lot of jobs out there. And you shouldn't feel that you need to stay in a workplace that isn't doing the right thing by you, or for whatever reason, just doesn't suit you, doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't need to be because there's something dramatically bad about it. It could just be, I don't know, that you got to, take two trams an hour and a half to get there, and there's a place down the street where you don't have to do that. I don't know. It's just, people should feel empowered. Trust your gut. Yep. Now, Dani, I'm going to get you back on the show for a full show once we can come back, which will be sometime next year, because there is so much more that I would love to discuss with you on air, because I'm getting text messages already going, wow, this is really cool. That's nice. Yeah. Well, I'd love to come into the studio when we can. That would be fun. Yeah, and then we can go out for lunch afterwards, because we're in Box Hill and there's plenty of great Asian I love
stuff.
Box Hill. Yeah,
really cool. We can do lunch afterwards.
Yep, deal. So
let's go to a break, and when we return, Robbie Bell, he's the owner of City Larder, and I know you know him very well also.
Yeah, he's awesome.
He does, and he loves a chat, so I saved him till last just in case we went over time. But I know he'll be champing at the bit. But before that, Dani, this is the time for my second special guest song request. And yours is also one of my favourites. So could you please announce your song and what it means to you?
Yeah, so I was thinking I'm so in love with Melbourne. I just think we're such a pack of legends for getting through this lockdown and getting cases down to zero. We are so great. So I wanted a Melbourne song. So I chose Leaps and Bounds by Paul Kelly, which is a song I grew up not far from the Nilex clock,
Oh.
which he mentions in this song, and
Yeah.
it was always a bit of a magic time for me to ride my bike along the river. And if I ever looked up and the temperature was 11 degrees, as he says in the song, it was like the day was completely charmed and magical, and my life just was a total sparkle. But something else that I really miss at the moment is live music, and so I wanted to choose a live version. So I chose this version with Neil Finn, who I saw perform last year with Fleetwood Mac. And so I guess with this song, choosing this song, I'm trying to encompass some of the things that I love.
Yeah.
Melbourne, the song, Paul Kelly, Neil Finn, but also live music and that feeling of being in a big crowd, which I love crowds, and I can't wait till we're allowed to get back into them in a safe way.
Oh, what a great story, Dani. Sent shivers up my spine, but also I must apologise. I don't have the live version for you because my
That's okay.
I've actually purchased the wrong one. I purchased everything on iTunes because I don't believe in playing things off YouTube or anything like that. But in my capacity yesterday, I've overlooked that completely, and so I do apologise. It's not the version that you're talking about.
Oh, well, that's all right, but it's still it's still a song that is so close to my heart, and anyone who wants to go and listen to some different versions of it, there's some awesome ones out there. So
we'll play that when you come in live. We'll save it up.
All right, deal.
All right, everyone. Well, I'll be right back after the break. And Dani, again, it's been a pleasure learning more about you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks so much for having me, Rae.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Welcome back. The time is just 33 minutes past 11 and you're listening to 94.1 FM. It's 3WBC with Rae Bonney. What an inspiration that Dani Valent is. We also just heard from Paul Kelly and the Coloured Girls' January 1987 release of Leaps and Bounds from their debut double album, Gossip. And I did neglect to play the live version with Tim Finn that she requested. Anyway, waiting with bated breath on the end of the phone, we have another English chappie, Chef Robbie Bell, who launched much loved Ivanhoe Charcuterie. I had a good shot at that. City Larder with his wife Rebecca in 2015 after an accomplished career in UK restaurants and bistros, not to mention 9 years in the Melbourne and Sydney kitchens of Rockpool Bar and Grill. Okay, Robbie, the mic's finally open. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Rae. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
There you are. Sometimes, Robbie, some technical issues occur and there's no one on the end of the line after I've made the whole grand introduction.
But can you get me? You're here nice and clear?
You're reasonably clear. I'm just turning you up a little bit on the panel, but no, I can hear you. So now we met, actually, we just had Dani Valent on the show and we met through Dani's podcast, Dirty Linen. Because
that's right.
You tuned into my episode and then I tuned into your episode and then I appeared on your podcast and now you're on my radio show.
It's all interlinked, I guess. All interlinked. Networking, you would call it.
Or maybe we're just desperate for guests.
It's one or the other.
So you're my cherry on top today, Robbie, my number 3 in a very impressive cast. What does it feel like being you today?
It feels good. I feel lucky. I feel grateful for what I've got, but yeah, on the same hand, I feel like I deserve it.
You don't feel like you deserve it?
I do.
Oh,
feel
good.
like I deserve it.
Good.
I do feel like I deserve it. You know, I think that's how it, and that's the truth. That's how it feels. You know, that's how I feel.
Yeah. Well, I did spoke. I spoke earlier in my show about the joy of researching guests that come on, and also the joy of discovery. And like Matt and Dani, you're also a package of incredible findings. It was only 5 years ago that you and Rebecca imagined City Larder. Can you tell us about that trajectory?
Well, it's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy. You know, at the beginning, it was incredibly difficult. We just had a baby. I quit my job and decided to go all in on this. We spent every penny we had. We got a 20 grand overdraft, which we got to about 18,000 and a few $100s, so we nearly went under. But then over time, we just ticked away at it, and just kept working hard and kept focused, and made sure that we never lost what we set out to achieve. And slowly but surely, it's just grew and grew and grew. And, especially the last 2 years, we've got into our own premise. Well, it was like 3 years ago we got into our own space. A year after that, like 2 years ago, it really started to get a bit of momentum. And now I really genuinely feel like there's a bit of a snowball effect, and we're just starting to break out a little bit more. And now we've got, I think, about 15 or 17 staff, and things are looking good. It's exciting times.
Wow. Because when I first spoke to you about City Larder and the word charcuterie came up, I had to do a little research, not only how to pronounce the word, but what it means. But can you tell us about the origins of charcuterie and also why you chose this as an area of excellence?
So charcuterie is French, basically for cold cuts, which can be all areas, from salamis to hams to terrines. It's all that kind of stuff that you see in delis, handcrafted meat products generally. And look, I got into it because I've always been fascinated by it. I worked for a chef called Terry Laybourne back in England for about 6 or 7 years, and he was obsessed by it. He used to drill us about turning product, in secondary products into premium products, and the skill and the craft behind it. So I was in that world for many years. And then when I come to Australia, it wasn't really a big part of the culture here. It was still there, and it still is very small in comparison to sausages, let's say, even though they are a form of charcuterie, you could almost say.
Oh, okay.
But I did a hamper at Rockpool. I was looking to start a business. Me and my wife, Rebecca, just had a baby, and I was looking to start my own business.
Can I just say, where did you put the baby during these times? Just sort of under the counter, or? Yeah,
Beck is amazing at multitasking and amazing at that kind of thing. So we helped. We both did our bit, but Beck definitely did the lion's share of that, I would definitely say, and helped and build the business. She was a vital. It's 50-50 in this. Yeah. I do the kitchen and she does the front, so she was definitely multitasking in that area. Obviously, not making it sound easy for her. It's when you're in the kitchen, it's hard to have a baby. It's a little bit easier on the desk. It's not easy. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy, but to have the baby at home is a lot easier than it is at having the kitchen. So she took the lion's share of that, and I helped out where I could. It was always something that I wanted to do. I wanted to start a business. I didn't know what business to start. I wrote many business plans, which is something that I love to do anyway. And I made these hampers at Rockpool for the staff for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And a girl said, "Oh, they were fantastic. You should start doing them." And in the hamper was a terrine, I should have said actually, was a terrine, some gravlax and some cheese. And it was for the people that work Christmas Eve. They had something to take home Christmas Eve night and have with the family the next day or whatever. It was just like a thank you for working Christmas. And the girl come back, Boxing Day or the day after and said, "You should start selling them." And I thought, shit, excuse me, that's a really good idea.
You're the second person that said shit on my show today. Actually, now the third, because I just said it as well.
Yeah. So then I did the business plan for that, and it was obviously something that I love doing. The maths worked out when I did the business plan. I thought, maybe this is an opportunity. Spoke to Rebecca, and she said, right, okay, let's start chipping away there. It was an easy entry to market. It didn't need a huge investment. I could quite easily just rent a kitchen for an hour or two each week, start off quite slow, and let it see if we got any momentum. Wow. And that's what we did.
Wow, that's I didn't know that because we've not discussed that before. But from small things, come other things as well. Because looking on your website again, directing anyone that's listening in, if you check out Robbie's website, it's a beautifully designed piece where you can see a lot of the produce that they painstakingly, it looks like you produce. It looks very labour intensive, Robbie.
It is very labour intensive for sure.
Well, my very dear friend who's passed away now, Reg Pound, Reg was 86 when he passed away a few years ago, but he used to make me potted tongue in this very ancient tin with things on the side that you'd screw down to make the tongue all compressed. And,
pressed tongue. Yeah, I know pressed tongue. Yeah, for sure.
So my kids were raised on that because he used to make one every month, so it would take us about a month to get through it. But I used to tell my kids it was ham, and they believed it because it was really delicious.
Tongue and mustard sandwiches is classic, man, for sure.
But when you tell them what it actually is, it sort of lost its appeal. Like the time when I tried to make my kids tripe, and we started eating that, and the first few mouthfuls was, this is really good, and then nah.
But I must say, you peel the tongue. That's the thing. You boil it, or whichever way you want to cook it, brine it, boil it, whatever. But then you peel it, and then you use the meat that's underneath that big. Well, I guess it's the skin, you would say, and it's not actual. You can't see the taste buds like you would on a normal tongue. It's the underneath bit that you actually eat.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, earlier on in the show, I was speaking with Matt Wilkinson, and we were talking about the demise of Crofter, which he started up earlier this year as a result of the maid establishment, George Columbaris's business going under. And, he was talking about, his anger at the government can't really see the industries in strife and offers no real support for the future or hope. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, look, I've got many thoughts about it. Well, with them guys, they come through a lot, really tough times as well with the wage crisis and all them kind of things. Regarding the wage, the underpaying and wage theft, like I don't really buy into it that much. But on the same hand, I'm very torn. I'm very, very torn because I don't buy into the fact that it all should come under one umbrella. Like if you're working at the high end, it is the same as working in a cafe, because what the employer is giving to that person is completely different. So, yeah, in that aspect, I think it should definitely change for different. If you're investing a lot of time, effort, produce, and into training, these kind of things that you do at the top end restaurants, that gives the chefs opportunity to go and get a higher paid job. Like I guess if you work as an intern for Armani, you're not going to get paid the same as you do if you get paid for being the intern at Cotton On. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't see how they can still be the same if you're at a high-end restaurant or a cafe. I think the fact that loading, how complicated the loading system is, and how people can get caught out on that very easily, and then it isn't made clear. It's very hard to follow. And then is it fair? That is another thing for the employer. But on the same hand, I don't think that staff should be ground to the bone and slogged and worked to death. I think there should be a limit. But when I was a young chef, I just wanted to work. I worked 70 hours a week and it's not like a macho thing. I worked 70 hours a week for many, 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 many years.
Now, is that because of your absolute, like it just, blew your hair back, lit all your fires and off you were going because that's where you needed to be?
But I wanted. If I got told that I could only do 38 hours when I would have gotten, when I was, whatever, 22 or whatever, I would have got another job. I would have gone and got another job at another restaurant. I wasn't interested in that. It's what I wanted to do. Like, I was obsessed by it. So I think if you're going to work at the top restaurants, you've got to understand that that's what's going to be required.
Yeah.
Like, not every soldier can be in the SES.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
No, that's right. Well, I know with my son George, he lived at home for a little bit during COVID before he moved up to Walgan Valley, and he'd work all day long in the kitchen and then come home with a sack full of groceries to go, I'm just going to do an experiment now, and he'd be up to all hours, pickling and making stuff.
I read a cookbook every night before I went to bed for, I'm not exactly, at least 18 years or something.
Wow.
Obviously nights out and things, but I would work all day, double shifts, start in the morning, not finish till late at night, and get into bed at midnight or whatever, 12:30, and I would always read a few pages of the cookbook every single night. I was obsessed.
Because I think this narrative around, especially chefs, as soon as you say, my son's a chef, the automatic response is, oh, what a terrible job. Oh, that's hard. And you go, well, it's actually not. I know it would be harder for, somebody like you or somebody like George or Matt to go and work in a 9-to-5 role and have a lot of time on their hands. I think that would be harder than, than what you pick up out of the energy you pick up out of hospo.
Definitely. And we want to create, we want to give experiences. We want we love hospitality. We love the feeling of making other people have a good night. Like that's what we, like comedians live to make people laugh. That's what they do. They go on that stage late at night when you're drinking. They're on the stage making you laugh, or actors or people in the theatre, and they want to captivate you. And it's just as chefs are the same. That's what they want to do. And if you were to take, this has been a really tough time, I would have thought, for chefs. They're very high energy. They don't like sitting around at home. They want to be out doing things, creating. And this has been a really tough time for them, I would have thought.
Yeah, well, that's right, because of the lack of activity.
Yes, exactly.
So speaking of people, and you're talking about comedians, I guess you're only as good as your last dish or as good as your last show, and you're very, very vulnerable to people's feedback. What is the most ridiculous request or complaint you've had during your time as a chef?
I've had heaps. The ice cream's too cold. All the ridiculous ones. But the one that's popped in my head straight away when you say that is actually not that ridiculous anymore. But I remember when I first heard the egg white omelette about 15 years ago in a hotel I was working at on breakfast, and someone coming and asked for an egg white omelette. I thought it was the waiter taking the mick. I was like, just egg white? That's it? But obviously now, over time, it's a bit more common than it was. But at the time, I really didn't think. I thought it was a joke. I really thought it was a joke.
We can actually just buy egg whites in the shops now.
Yeah. Egg white omelette, crazy.
So what, I know that you take mental health very seriously, and I've sort of yacked on a bit about, how you create a really good environment for your people, and you really value what your people not only bring technically but also culturally to your workplace. So what do you think is the recipe for creating a mentally healthy workplace, particularly in hospitality?
Well, first off, culture is definitely first thing and foremost. When we take on a new member of staff, they have to fit in. They have to be nice to all the other people. They have to. It's so important that you don't have a rotten apple or someone that's going to rock the boat and everyone's pushing in the right direction. I guess from the top, you've got to show interest. You've got to ask people what like the owners or the head chefs or whatever it is, or the person that's steering the ship needs to show interest and try and know everyone's name. Make sure you know what everyone's parents do for a living. Like, I know Sarah's dad is a plumber, and I know Brock's dad is a truck driver, and I know, do you know what I mean? And I know Wilson's dad's a college lecturer.
But they're all handy things to know as well, because you probably need a plumber and a truck driver at some stage.
Yeah. I've got the plumbing and the distribution sorted. I only employ people that can help me in the future. Yeah. But yeah, I guess making sure that showing interest in them, giving them an opportunity, letting them know that where the business is going, that it's not stagnant. I watched a thing a while ago on TV, really quick story about they give these guys some bricks to build a house, and they said every time you build a house, I'm going to give you $5. So they built the house, they took the house away. They brought the house back, they brought the bricks back, they give them $5, they built another one. They just kept on doing this. And they're seeing how long they would do that for. And if you took the house away and brought back the bricks, give them the money, they would do it for literally a couple of hours. Then they did it to another group of people where they built a house, they knocked it down in front of them, and they give them the $5, and they said, rebuild it. And then they rebuilt it, they knocked it down again, and then they rebuilt it in front of them. So they could see they weren't actually progressing anywhere. Yeah. And they lasted, literally, they did it like 2 or 3 times. They're like, but I'm not doing this, it's a waste of time. Yeah. Even though it was exactly the same thing, but they felt like they were going somewhere. Yes. That's always stuck in my mind, that people need to feel like that they're actually progressing, they're doing something for a bigger cause than just themselves, and the business is actually they're going somewhere and they know what's happening, if that makes sense.
Well, it absolutely does, especially in the food business, because literally people come in, they consume your food, and it goes down the toilet quite soon after. So what's the point? That's a philosophical, question. What's the point of, going to all this trouble with micro herbs and placement and, plating and things like that? You're just going to eat it and, shit it out.
But I guess the reality is it's the bigger picture than that. It's like them people that are eating it Are they celebrating? Are they, have they just had a baby? Is it a family that haven't seen each other for years? Is it a family that used to fight and now they're trying to come together? Is it, what's the bigger story that people are enjoying the food around that,
Yeah.
And again, building brand and people knowing that you're building a brand, that they pick up your product and they know that the customers, they're not worried. They're not, I hope everyone enjoys this. They know that everyone's going to enjoy that, and that's your job to make sure that the product's like that, and then to create that environment. The customer creates that environment, and it's all big one. If that makes sense.
Well, I think that's the beautiful thing about food, and something that all over the world during COVID, people are just gagging to go out and have that experience, because I don't think we probably recognise the significance of sharing food was not just about eating; it was about connection and being together. And I cook all the time. My greatest joy is stuffing my kids full of food and hearing their feedback. Any chance I get, oh yes, I can cook for you, I can feed you.
Yeah.
So it's food and water is the sustenance thing that we need to live, and it's been going on since day dot. So it's stepped in history and origins as well, which is also beautiful.
I think this time as well is definitely going to, if the restaurant's being closed, will make people remember that and make them more, maybe appreciate the arts a little bit more, to be honest.
I hope so. I really do. And, speaking to you and also Matt especially about, people not realising the very, very skinny margins that, hospitality establishments run upon, that we might be more willing to, pay a little bit more to get the experience and be more appreciative of the work that goes into creating and crafting what we're eating.
We have to. It's not like we should. We have to. Prices need to go up. People need, bills need to change, and that is an absolute fact. But businesses can't run on 5% margin. This is definitely not a public service. It's not, it's not a not-for-profit. These are real businesses. This what's happened here is shown how vulnerable the hospitality industry is. There's very few restaurants have good savings to get them through this. They're not living, bill to bill effectively, but they definitely don't have big pots of cash put to one side.
No.
And that needs to change.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they need the ability to be able to do that. And also, I think many people that start out, being proprietors in the hospitality industry don't necessarily have the business acumen or the skills required to run a business, because it's not just about producing food and giving people a great experience. There's a whole business model behind that, and I think that our governments could be better in terms of any business, small business that is launching, that they have access to free resources to learn how to manage a business.
I agree. I totally agree. 100%. Yeah, definitely. I've got. It's exactly that. Because at the end of the day, you can get a food safety license, you can get yourself a lease, you can open your doors, and you can start selling food, and then that's it. But then you've got to get all the wage things right. You've got to get all the super right, and you might not have a clue about these kind of things. No. So the government definitely needs to support in that area and make it clearer in a lot of areas as well.
Yes, and I think, like hospitality, entertainment, people are very much driving in their lane. Am I an actor? Am I a singer? Am I a chef? But, those people are also small business owners. If you're a violinist, you need to know how to operate your small business. And I know my George being up at Welgan Valley at the moment with James Viles, James is, keeping George really, really up front and centre with all the back end stuff as well, the books and things like that, as well as, being in the kitchen, which I'm really grateful that, George is going to get exposure to all of that as well.
Yeah, that's great that he's doing that. That is fantastic and getting that opportunity. But I also do believe that it shouldn't be as easy as it is to open a restaurant.
No.
Just because you like painting, it doesn't mean that you should be able to be a professional painter and run a business through that. Just because you're a chef doesn't mean that you should be able to to own your own restaurant and run your own restaurant. In my opinion, that's just my opinion, one man's opinion. I think it shouldn't be. It should be a difficult thing because you're running a business. It's a completely different skill set, and it should be difficult.
Yeah. Hey, I've got another question for you, which is a little bit left of centre because I've just looked at the time. It's 56 minutes past 11, people, and coming up next is the divine Paula Hogg, and she'll be rolling out an entire lazy Sunday afternoon of music and banter, which is bound to get you pretty chilled out. She's not arrived in the studio yet, so we've got a bit of time. But I just wanted to say, Robbie, for our listeners today, if any of our discussions have brought up uncomfortable feelings for listeners, please remember help is there. Here's a few options for further support, crisis support especially, Lifeline 131114. Suicide callback service is 1300 659 467, and emergency services is 000. Don't hesitate. If you're worried about yourself or someone else, that's what they're there for. Ring the number. So, Robbie, upon reflection, what advice would you tell your 15-year-old self if you could?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Look, I'm more of a kind of give it a go and learn from your own mistakes. I don't really take advice that well, if I'm totally honest with you. But I guess I would say try and be a little bit more empathetic, especially in your early years. Because I was, sometimes I look back and cringe a little bit the way I acted in my early years, especially for instance, I was running kitchens at quite a young age, and there was a lot of older people above me who were maybe having a child for the first time, and I didn't really give much thought to that, and I was like, get to work, and a bit, hard-ass about that, and I cringe every time I think about that. I think you should have been way more empathetic. That was really immature.
Well, that's when we feel that pain and that feeling of being uncomfortable, that's all about the learning, isn't it? And so that means that experience has meant something to you, so that's really good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being on the show today, Robbie, and for being so open in sharing your experiences, and also just for the work that you do and making the world a better place for so many who experience the fruits of your incredible labour.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Now, I'll be back on Sunday the 13th of December, hopefully with a guest live in the studio, speaking about what it feels like being then. So stay tuned to my Facebook, LinkedIn, Insta, Twitter, YouTube for other shows just like this. And Robbie, you're going to take us out today with your final special guest song request. Do you want to tell me about that and what it means?
Well, I give you two.
Oh, it's The Boss. It's The Boss.
Oh, the man, I'm on fire.
Yeah.
I'm on fire. But yeah, it's a song that I love. It's short. It gets straight to the point. It hits all the emotions really quickly. And I've been in many late night parties when the dust settle in after having a big night out, and I whack this on and I